All right, it is 7 PM, and I will call to order the regular meeting of the Village of Tinley Parks Plan Commission, and we will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Gaskell.
Present.
Commissioner Gatto.
Present.
Commissioner Hamilton.
Here.
Commissioner Manny.
Present.
Commissioner Merrick.
Here.
Commissioner Sepisi.
Here.
Commissioner Truxell. Acting Chair Shaw.
Here. We have a quorum. Any communications from staff?
No communications.
All right. We'll move forward with the approval of the minutes of the March 16th, 2023 regular meeting. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion. Second.
Motion, Commissioner Sepisi down there. Second, Commissioner Gaskell. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Minutes are approved. We have a single item on the agenda this evening. It's a public hearing for Odyssey Club Townhomes model change, special use for PUD, substantial deviation, and site plan architectural approval. I do have notice of publication for the public hearing. All looks good. So with that, do I have a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
Motion Commissioner Gatto, second.
Second.
Second Commissioner Manny. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, the public hearing is now open, and we'll proceed with our staff report.
Thank you. So for tonight, this item is for Odyssey Club Townhomes, model change special use for PUD, substantial deviation, and site plan architectural approval. This item is a continuation as was previously presented in late 2022. So I'll proceed with the information as provided in the staff report, and our director will provide some updated information.
And just as a clarification, so the plan, or this went to the village board. They kind of were hoping some things could get worked out, so they had continued it there. In working with our attorney, we kind of realized it was going to take a little bit of time and the petitioner to work through some of the items that were open. So the village board basically remanded it back to the plan commission for when this was resolved to come back between you guys. So we're not going to go over all the details of what happened the last time, but it has been a little bit, so we will summarize kind of what's happening here. I think the goal here is, unless there's new information, but I think the overall design was pretty well hashed out at the last meetings of the actual ranch-style townhome change, which is a big portion of this. And just kind of what's been added or changed or clarified will be kind of the association covenant situation that was kind of brought up during that public hearing. So I'll give it back to Lori to just kind of summarize where we're at.
Sure. So for the proposal, the existing site and its history, so, this is Odyssey is over 19 acres. The Phase 7 development as proposed is Olympus Drive and Apollo Courts, and it's part of the larger Odyssey Club development and was annexed and rezoned in 1990, along with subsequent approvals. So here's an image for, at one point in 2002, it was a phasing plan. Phase 7 is 32 lots, 117 units. So 25 of those lots, meaning space for a building, which would comprise of 91 units total, is the subject of this development proposal. So 4 lots built, occupied, 3 under active construction, which may be a little bit past that by now. Yeah,
They're actually occupied now.
yeah, occupied now, yeah. So this is some detail that we had in the staff reports, with the new information highlighted in red. Dan's already gone over a fair share of it. Would you do you want me, would you like me to summarize a little bit?
Yeah.
Sure. So the previous public hearing was here at Plan Commission, November 17th, and the project received site plan architectural approval with a recommendation for special use for substantial deviation to Village Board. So it went to Village Board on December 6th, was on the agenda and discussed for a few meetings. And as Dan noted at that time, upon discussion, it was remanded back to Plan Commission for staff, village attorney, and petitioner to work on issues. So upon the review, there was some determination regarding what would need to happen. Would you like to talk about that?
Sure, I'll just, the couple of the things that were kind of outstanding that were brought up is one, kind of, was there an underlying association that these individual lots would be a part of? And then what kind of happened was a part of a larger umbrella association. And those were the original proposals way back in the day, was that it would have its own, join a sub-association and be part of the umbrella association. So any changes to covenants are part of a PUD approval, because that is kind of how when these PUDs are kind of developed over a long period of time, when those covenants, you're kind of relying on them to kind of how it'll operate, how it'll develop going forward. So any changes to those are part of a substantial deviation. Seeing that those were changing was what we were trying to wrap our head around to make sure they were protecting the current residents and the future residents out there. Just as a recap of where we went, the underlying association issue was kind of worked out pretty easily and our attorney has agreed with their approach. It's kind of like a dormant association. Obviously, they're planning to own all of the lots as it exists today, so there's no need to truly establish it as it sits today. But upon sale of any of the units, it'll basically trigger it at that point that there would be a underlying sub-association there. So that's worked out essentially at this point, and would be recorded with these lots. The one thing we're still kind of working through is with the umbrella association. There's nothing requiring they join the umbrella association, but there is obviously some shared expenses there. So we've worked with the petitioner on coming up with a cost-sharing agreement, which will address some of those shared expenses like the gatehouse, landscaping, roads that could come up. So our attorney has worked with their attorney as well to kind of come up with a first draft that's been in the association's hands for a couple months now, as their attorney has been working with their association to make sure that it meets all their needs and they're in agreement with it. So that's kind of where it stands now. It's in the association's hands. They may have comments, they may accept it. We don't really know at this point. So as part of this, what we've done is everything's headed in the right direction. We feel like the draft they have addresses the main concerns that we had. So we've just conditioned the PUD approval that basically that has to be agreed to and recorded prior to occupancy, which is probably at least a year from now. So hopefully that would get flushed out in a year. If for some reason there was some issues, we're willing to work with the petitioner and the umbrella association to work through those. But I think we have some significant time here to make sure that gets addressed. And then talking with the umbrella association's attorney, Paul, I think it was Paul, he seemed confident this was headed in the same direction too. So we're here so that way the petitioner can move forward with their development. And they've kind of addressed those two main issues.
Okay, so as with the staff packet, the only two new pieces of information in the list of the reviewed plans were the proposed drafts for this covenant and cost-sharing agreement. All the other plans as relating to design all remain the same as previously proposed. So background on zoning, as I said, this is part of the Odyssey Club PUD. And adjacencies are to the north, the golf club, south, vacant land, east, unincorporated, as well as west. So this requires a special use approval because it's changing the PUD. Previous approval allowed for 2-story townhome buildings, and the proposal at this point is to allow single-story ranch as part of the development. And then this, of course, triggers that special use as it's a substantial deviation. And the petitioner, as previously noted in 2022, noted that this format of the ranch style is mainly due to market demands, so empty nesters, that sort of thing. And, that the architecture, so the single story as well as the style of architecture kind of reflects the current market demands. So here's an image of what the 25, the Phase 7 development is in plan view. And again, no changes to this from the previous consideration. A site plan, so this is the buildings themselves, as now presented, are a slight reduction versus the previous approval. There are no other changes to the actual site plan, and there are no encroachments into any easements. For landscaping, the proposal is to remain consistent with landscaping as installed, so 1 tree per dwelling unit. Landscape code requires 1 parkway tree per 50 feet of frontage. Staff supportive of a waiver, as most of the proposed trees are going to be in front yards. And then below are 3 of the landscaping plan views of each of the types of units. So there's 2 as well as 3 and 4. For architecture, I'll try to summarize this because we have some images following. So the density and the building configuration type, that's remaining the same. So the 25 buildings have a total of 91 units. 17 are 4 units to a building, 7 are 3 units to a building, and 1 is a 2-unit duplex design. The 2 and 3 unit designs are similar to the 4 unit. 13 of the 25 lots will have basements, and the previous approval had a few different variety of models with respective square footages. There's a slight reduction in the square footage, and this configuration of the types of end units is the same, so it's 50 end units and 41 interior units. So these are in the plans referred to as Unit A and Unit B. So here's a plan of what a 4-unit would be. And then here's some of the elevations. These are front, rear, and the sides of the 4-unit. And then I also noted here physical samples. So same as before, we have 2 different color scheme samples here. Brick, so they're a neutral variety color. And then here are line drawing elevations, again of the 4-unit. As far as some of the architectural detailing, the style has kind of a contemporary overall feel to it. It's got a large front gable with a second nested gable in it. So there's a variety in this type of play and scale. And the proposed rear appears to complement the existing building. There is less architectural variety on the rear, but overall it's the design, staff doesn't see an issue with the design. And then, so there you can see one of the views again at the bottom. And then for materials, as I noted before, it has brick along with some siding, and some of the finer details have soldier coursing, stone sills on the windows with like a frieze fascia board, and gable trims with some eaves. And so there are a few differences that were noted as before. for, including more articulated columns, 6-foot privacy screen between the interiors of the 4 unit types, and, smaller details where, no second-story cedar window trim and architectural siding. So there's a few images below of what the previous design was. So these are on the site, so the older design from the previously approved models. And then here is an image of what we have up here in front, the 2 samples. And so on the screen as well as in the report are the specific details of the manufacturing specs on those. And lastly, so here are some images to kind of give a feel for those homes that are out there right now, and some below are some of the variety of those neutral tones of brick. So that concludes staff presentation. I have the standards up on screen. And I also have the petitioner, Anthony DeAngelis, representing ownership.
Okay. Mr. DeAngelis, would you be interested in speaking?
Yeah, I have kind of one basic comment I'd like to share.
Okay, it's a public hearing, so you'll need to sign in, and I'll swear you in.
Okay, sorry.
If you could just raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
Absolutely, yes, I do.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so Dan kind of encapsulated what we've been dealing with since the original approval from the Plan Commission back in November. It's been a little bit of an arduous process trying to work through some of these things, but I think he can attest to the fact that we've been trying to be as cooperative as we can to address all the issues that have been raised, either from the staff or through the village attorney. I think he should have received possibly late this afternoon, I don't know if you got it from our attorney, a copy of the letter, you were copied on it, that went to the village attorney. They've been talking multiple times today about some of these last-minute issues, trying to resolve everything, and I guess it was requested, I'm not sure if it was by you or by Mike, the village attorney, that we reduce to writing certain commitments we're willing to make as it relates to this cost-sharing agreement and the new declaration, as far as adding the cost-sharing agreement as an addendum or an exhibit to the declaration that will be recorded as part of the amendment. Am I correct? That's what we were talking about, that's what you guys were looking for?
Say that again? Sorry.
There's 2 things. Previously, we submitted a new declaration of covenants, conditions, and restrictions that will apply to these townhomes called Gulfview Townhome Association, which is substantially in the same format as the Fairway Townhome Declaration. Pretty much verbatim, same thing, other than revisions to address the new product and the nature of the Phase 7. That's what was submitted a while back. It did reference this cost-sharing agreement. As you pointed out in the beginning, we're not obligated by virtue of the original declaration to be a part of the umbrella, but we had said we would agree to work on a cost-sharing agreement for those costs that are applicable to this phase of the subdivision that should be shared. And that's what we've been trying to resolve since January. We had an initial meeting with the Umbrella Association. We took it upon ourselves to make the first draft of this agreement, which was presented to them in early February. And we have yet to get any formal comments back on that agreement yet. And our concern is that we may or may never get a resolution on this if we don't get the cooperation and if there isn't a dialogue and to resolve this and additional cost information that we requested so we could do a legitimate cost-sharing agreement. And so our only issue at this point is we have agreed in our letter that was sent to the village attorney and to Dan, and I'll just read it to you verbatim. Gulfview and I, which is us, and my attorney, will continue diligent efforts to work with the Umbrella Association and its attorney toward completion and execution of the cost-sharing agreement. Gulfview, however, cannot agree to nor allow this to be a condition of approval of the amendment to the PUD or the issuance of certificates of occupancy or permits. And I think you have to understand our concern here. We have significant financing involved with building these units. We can't let the fate of those units be contingent upon this cost-sharing agreement. We can't go forward, build these, have people ready to move in. If we have not come to agreement on a cost-sharing agreement, we're technically not allowed to get a certificate of occupancy. And I know, Dan, you think there's a lot of time involved, and I'm very hopeful that we can get this resolved, but we have to protect our interests as the owner-developer on a $40 million project that we're doing. And I can tell you right now, if our lender saw this term, and they would likely not give us the financing we need to go forward with it until this agreement's in place. We're not trying to be difficult, we're just trying to be realistic and practical about it. So we've given our word, you've been on several emails where we've tried to reach out and further the conversation on the agreement, and we're not sure why we're not getting the response. We want to get it done, we fully intend to get it done, but we just cannot agree to it the way it's being proposed on the approval. That's all we're saying. That's our biggest issue right now. That's the only issue we have.
Sure. And I guess to say, so we had a call on March 16th with their attorney, and I would say it was a pretty positive
Right.
call.
Right.
And it's nothing against their association. Associations just tend to move a little slow.
We understand
right?
that. We
So,
understand that.
They have to explain stuff to a large amount of people, take votes, they meet monthly. So it happens. They seem like they're headed in the right direction. Their attorney didn't have any major concerns.
You're right.
So
We didn't
they
hear any
needed to get
concerns.
some cost stuff together about the streets. So it seemed like they were working through that, and that was less than a month ago. They seem like they're working on it. Ultimately, this gets down to what the request is, which is that PUD document or covenants are part of a PUD adoption. Essentially, your request is to take away what was previously proposed when this came through, which is, hey, we're going to be part of the Umbrella Association. That's fine. We're okay with changing that, but I think what your attorney, our attorney, there's obligations out here for your development with this. So.
And we understand that.
What our recommended condition is, and that was from both our staff and our attorney reviewing that, was this condition does obligate you to make sure something gets done. If we have a year, if for some reason you're not getting a response for 6 months and nothing's getting resolved, we are completely open to addressing that, or taking a different route. Is they can't hold up your project or hold it hostage because they don't want to. I think everybody's working towards the same goal, but at the same time, if we approve this without that condition, there's nothing actually holding the development to doing that cost-sharing agreement besides hey, we promise we're gonna do it. So it's just, that's kind of staff and our attorney's recommendation to make sure this continues to move forward and get resolved. If it doesn't, we're totally, in 6 months, if nothing's resolved, come talk to us, because I think then we do have a bigger issue. But again, that doesn't seem like what's happening here. So
Well, again,
that's kind of, otherwise, it was that's to help this move forward, right? The goal was hopefully all this was resolved before.
I
we
agree,
came.
and that was our objective as well.
So this
We've
is
got
just
everything
kind of
else
the one
resolved.
thing we're putting in there to make sure the current residents, this entire setup still works and everyone's protected.
And we understand that, and I would be more comfortable agreeing to that if I just saw more response and more cooperation to get this done. Like I said, we're doing everything we can, but we can't force it. That's all. That's the problem. We don't control both sides of the equation.
And part of that goes
Yep.
back to how this was originally set up, the number of years that's been involved, not
Yeah.
joining the association before,
but
right?
again-
So
yeah.
it goes back pretty far. I think, again, we have a good solution coming forward. Their attorneys seem like they were fine with it, and they're working with the association to come to the agreement. So
Well, yeah, I mean, I think
we need to have, we're recommending that if we're going to change this to say okay, you don't join the umbrella association, which was the proposal back in 2007, 2008, and was recorded to these lots. If that's going to change, okay, we can't hold you to
Well,
joining
and
the
again,
umbrella, but
there's
how
nothing
do we
that's-
make sure those costs aren't shifted from
Mm-hmm.
your development onto the current resident? So that's why that's there, is just to make sure that gets resolved. And again, if the umbrella association decides we're not going to approve this, we're going to try holding this up, I think our attorney has said they don't really have a right to do that. And we'd definitely be willing to come back and negotiate this. If that's what's happening, I don't think it is, but if that's what ends up happening, definitely let us know so we can.
Well, I mean,
We have some ability in this language to say, we can make them conditional or something like that, or we could come back and amend it. But I think we need something in place there. And without it established right now, that's why the condition.
well, and again, we've given you a form of an agreement, which is missing certain cost information that we don't possess. So we've done, like I say, everything we can to try and bridge that gap and get one in place. And we just can't be beholden to that as far as, our approvals, which we talked about on the amendment, and, building permits or occupancy. We just can't agree to that. That's our basic problem. Again, if we had the agreement resolved, we wouldn't be talking about this. So I don't know how else to communicate that. That's our big concern. So,
Ken, does it strike you that we ought to move to adjourn? Or?
No, just one second. Village manager, Pat,
Yeah,
you,
Dan, this isn't preventing them from at least getting the permits.
No, it's just upon occupant. It basically is tying the occupancies to say, hey, setting some time frame there that says you got to get something established. But they could get permits to begin building. We're already reviewing them, actually. So-
yeah, plans have been submitted and are in review right now, so.
So as soon as this was approved, we could theoretically issue permits there.
You could see where this is going, though. If for some reason we can't come to an agreement, or we don't get the cooperation, then-
And again, we've
You're
had,
telling us we
we've
can't
had
occupy.
cooperation with their attorney. I mean, it's not, he's calling every day.
No, and I
So,
know.
and I
it's
think
calls
he's
a day.
explained that when we had a phone call with our attorney, their attorney, everybody seemed on the same page. So,
if I could, just one moment. I see some folks in the public here are wishing to speak. As in the form of the public hearing, we went through the staff report, we heard from the petitioner, there's some discussion going, and then we'll go to the commissioners, they'll ask some questions, and then we'll have time for the public to speak. When it comes time for the public, I will swear, anyone who wants to speak, I'll swear you in, you'll sign in, okay? So I just wanted to let you guys know I'm not ignoring you. I see that you're anxious to speak. We want to make sure we handle these things in the proper order, right? Pat, was there some more here?
No, I would just like to add, we've been working, with the developer for over a year to get this done and to make contact with that HOA to get these costs to get put together. So it's been very frustrating on our part because we've been trying to assist them in that. And the slow up is from that HOA and getting the costs. And in our opinion, it shouldn't be holding up the developer that's done all the right things per the regulations to get this stuff in. So, we'd like to see it as a village to get moving. But again, we understand that, but they've been working diligently. Our attorneys have been so engaged in this process, assisting their attorneys to try to make this thing work. So we'd like to see it get going.
Okay, appreciate that. I noted Commissioner Merrick, I didn't mean to cut you off, but
It's okay.
you go ahead.
It just strikes me that, that if it's not resolved, that it's not worth taking under consideration, and perhaps we should adjourn.
Well, we're in the middle of a public hearing.
I understand.
When we complete the public hearing, we can decide whether we believe as a commission that we have completed the public hearing, or whether there would be a reason to continue the public hearing itself. But as long as you have the floor here, any questions on the matter itself?
No, it seems it seems pretty clear where we're at right now.
Okay. Commissioner Sepisi, if I remember correctly, you're the only one who was not on the commission at the time this came through, so I don't want to
That I
speak.
know of, yes.
I'm sorry, what?
That I know of, yes.
Okay, so I don't want to speak for the rest of them, but you're the only one who really hasn't had an opportunity to look at the substance of the plan. So before we move on to the changes, any questions on that?
No, getting caught up pretty quick.
Okay, great. So, any other questions or comments for staff or the developer? None?
Not for me.
Okay. Commissioner Gaskell?
Just to make it clear in my head, this whole thing, occupancy and stuff in these units and stuff, all hinge on this cost share agreement.
Yes, and
And we
that's
haven't
been our-
got anything in writing on that, correct? We just got a lot of
Well, we have an
promises and-
example, they have an example of the cost-sharing agreement. and
No, I mean,
some-
we have no definite agreements with that. Nothing in writing agreeing to that.
The petitioner has agreed to do it, but it hasn't been resolved between the petitioner and the umbrella association. So that agreement hasn't happened, but the petitioner has agreed that they will do it. It just hasn't been finalized yet. So
Lori?
that's why our condition is kind of what gets us, because it's not fully
We all lost
resolved,
it.
that condition's what kind of makes sure that still happens.
Okay.
Lori, computers again?
Commissioner Hamilton, any questions for staff or the petitioner?
No, I don't.
Okay. Commissioner Gatto?
So my only concern is, originally when it came in front of us, a lot of the homeowners were very against this development coming in, correct? You have a lot of homeowners that are involved in their HOAs. I mean, I've been there, I've been on it, I've been a board member on an HOA. I just hope that their opinion of what is being developed isn't holding up the agreement so that the developer cannot develop this land. That's my concern during this whole thing.
And I'll just note from a timing perspective, actually, so the staff's knowledge of this even being an issue came up as part of the public hearing. So actually, this has only been since November, December that we even knew this was an issue. So they've taken some time here, but it's been about 3 months.
Which isn't that long.
So I actually don't have concerns that the umbrella association's
Okay.
stalling. It's been 3 months. It does take some time. There's holidays when it was originally happening in December, so it's been 3-4 months. We have another year to essentially resolve this before there would be an issue. And I think in that time, in the next 6 months, we should have a pretty good idea of, is this a bigger issue or not?
Okay,
So that's where I think in the next 6 months, we can, if this is still an issue 6 months from now, then maybe we have to figure something else out. I think everybody believes this is the right solution to go forward, but that's not to say there isn't something else. If they're really saying, no, we don't want this development, we're not going to do this cost-sharing agreement, it seems against the umbrella association's interests, in my opinion. But maybe we could work something out where the village accepts the money and we pay the association, I don't know, something different. But I think what we're doing now is, with the cost-sharing agreement, is the right option.
agree.
And even the petitioner is, they're the ones that have kind of proposed it, and our attorneys agree.
yeah,
as
I
well.
think it's a great resolution to the issue.
Commissioner Manning?
No questions.
Okay. So I had a couple of questions just to make sure I'm understanding the situation. Because I think perhaps I heard something different from what I read in the staff report. Under the current PUD, and we're looking at a substantial deviation from the PUD, what is the obligation, if they built it out as previously approved, there would be a sub-association that would be required to be part of the umbrella? Is that
They
correct?
had previously proposed it would join a sub-association, and that was already part of the umbrella. So they would have joined an existing sub-association and the umbrella association. They got rejected from the sub-association previously, so that's why that, this alternative methods even kind of, if they were able to already be in those associations back then, I think it would have already been resolved, but, so that's why this is needed in the first place.
Okay.
But
so-
that was the original proposal, but they can't really go forward with it, so that's why we're going forward with this kind of different.
But forming an independent sub-association is not a viable option?
They could, but it's one owner, so they're proposing to own it all themselves, so that's why they
I-
are doing that, it's just kind of.
That's right, I
dormant.
forgot about that from
Yeah.
the.
So
from the
that
previous.
part has kind of been resolved. They'll have a sub-association ready to go in the case that they sell any of the lots.
Right. Am I to understand that the village has been in touch with the umbrella association's attorney,
Yes.
but the umbrella association's attorney has been non-responsive to you?
All the attorneys have been talking, including staff and myself, on one or two conversations.
Okay, all right,
There's been communication, yes.
okay.
It's just, and we understand that it's not, full-time responsibility for people to be on an association. We're anxious to get this resolved, put it behind us, and move forward without any conditions like that. You can see why it's a concern of ours, and so we just don't feel like there's been a strong interest in getting this resolved yet. And I don't know, we don't know the inner workings of why that might be. It
Okay.
could be just the way they meet, or who's on the board,
Well,
I don't know.
I think their attorney explained it pretty well on our phone call together, which is that they even had an election in the middle of this. They had 2 new members, they were getting them up to speed and on board. So they did kind of explain where this was at and in a feeling that this will move
I wasn't on
forward.
that call. That was just-
Which is, the part of it's the attorneys can't call you and talk. We have 2 attorneys, they have to talk together on this,
Yeah, I
right?
understand.
So, that's just kind of part of it, but there was a positive feeling coming out of that, and they did explain what some of those initial holdups were, which is, there was an election, they had to get people up to speed, they had to disseminate the information to all the members, things like that, so.
Okay, so, again, we have 2 parties here. We have the developer and we have the umbrella association. And at least as it sounds to me, the developer has put forth a good faith recommendation or proposal here. And I kind of echo Commissioner Gatto's concern about the potential for the developer being held up. And I don't want to ascribe any motivations to the umbrella association, but it seems to me like the developer, if we put this condition on there, the developer is the one holding all the responsibility, and it would effectively be a pocket veto if the umbrella association, there's no incentive, I guess, for the umbrella association to come to the table on it. That would be my concern on it. So I think perhaps now would be a good time if there's no other questions or comments from the commissioners.
I have a question. So,
Yes.
I mean, one of the things that, the reason I made a motion like I did was that I assumed that the developer had agreed to the conditions for this before we arrived at today's plan meeting. Is that true?
We send basically, those are staff recommended conditions that we're proposing that say, this is how we best think it moves forward. So we send that to the petitioner
Okay.
and didn't hear anything until, I think, yesterday, that there was some opposition to one of them.
Okay, so that's what I didn't understand, that we arrived with these recommended conditions, and then when we come to the meeting, the recommended condition is rejected.
Yeah. And they could, and at the end of the day, you could take, you guys, even if the petitioner doesn't agree to it, you can still attach a condition. I usually say, don't vote on that, because if there are issues, vote on what the petitioner wants, kind of, I lean that way. And that's just staff's way of making sure this gets, if this wasn't done, it's leading to bigger issues, I think, for the developer, the association, and the village. So that is why we've recommended that condition, because if nothing is there, and it's technically private roads owned by the association, the gatehouse is owned by the association, yes, there's certain easements in place, but it's just leading to some bigger issues that I think is due to this change that's being proposed. So that's why we think that's a good catch to make sure it's resolved, because if it's not, it's going to lead to issues later.
So, just so we're clear, Commissioner Merrick, did you make a motion? Because I thought you were just suggesting that perhaps we could think about that.
I don't,
Okay.
I'm not.
I don't think there was a formal.
Yeah, I didn't take that as a motion. I just want to be clear. And I think procedurally, we're going to go to the public here. I just want to make a point that we're a recommending body. We would, whatever we do, we would be making a recommendation to the village board. Ultimately, it's the village board's decision. So if we recommended a condition, the village board could still strip that condition. They could accept it. You know, there's still time for that. My concern, if we had a continuance here, we're just continuing to drag this out when we look at the substance of the development, the plan commission's already been through it. And what we're talking about here is a technical issue, which isn't really a, you know, substance of the plan commission. All right? So ultimately, the legal matter and all that, I think, is important for us to consider, but ultimately, it's going to be the village board's decision.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
If the petitioner doesn't agree to the condition, why would we want to send it to the trustees?
Yeah. That,
Why would we want to do that?
I mean, that's a very fair question.
I mean, we're just wasting a lot of everybody's time.
I think that that's a very
I-
wise
I-
observation.
That's why we lean towards saying, technically, you guys can attach a condition and vote on whatever you guys want. We usually say if the petitioner's saying, don't even vote on that because we don't want it, then I usually say, okay, remove it and vote based on that. That changes our opinion on this, though, because I think we have more to talk about, which is that the covenants are specifically part of the substantial deviation, so any changes to those are. So I think there would be a proposal then of them saying, we want to remove the previous covenants, and that's all they're proposing at that point. We promise we're going to work on it. We have nothing to hold them to doing anything. So that's why that condition was
Yeah.
staff's, but
That
if
makes
they're not
sense to me.
agreeing to it, and I'll leave that up to them, whether that's a hard and fast no, or a yes, or a maybe, I'll leave that up to them to decipher that, but then I would recommend if they say no, then take it off and vote based on that.
So one other point that Mr. DeAngelis mentioned that I think slid right by is that he was talking about their lender, and if such a condition were put on there, which is relatively open-ended at this point, even if it is, you know, potentially a year-long for the build-out, the lender may object to that. And so they may have financing issues, and the development may have trouble going forward anyway. So if I understood what you said.
Yes, you did.
Okay. Okay, so that's a lot of information to unpack here, and I think we can go to the public. No, you have public comment in the public hearing, because the public, that's why we swear them in, they'd be giving testimony. If I could ask, everyone who's going to speak would have to sign in, but to keep the meeting going, anybody who wishes to speak, could you just raise your right hand? And even if you're not sure you're going to speak, if you think you might have something to say, I'll just swear you in. Just raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you will give will be the truth? Yes. Okay. You're sworn in. Now, before you speak, I would just ask that you sign in. And anyone who is going to speak after, just follow up and sign the sheet so we can keep moving. And if you could just state your name, sir.
Sure. My name is Andy McLeod. I am the president of the Umbrella Association for the Odyssey. So I had a couple comments to make in terms of this situation. Number one is we are trying to work with you folks, trying to get this done.
Good.
We have met with the attorney 4 times. We have been trying to get the attorney's decision on a couple of things because we are trying to work through this process in terms of what you have here. the cost-sharing agreement that's in question here is problematic from a covenant standpoint for us because it's asking us to do the maintenance of what Greenview or Fairway would be doing. And we don't do that as an umbrella association for any of the associations, is part of the issue that we're faced with. In addition to that, I know that Fairway, I was told that and I found documentation that Fairway has rejected your offer, your request to become part of Fairway. But Fairway wasn't the only townhouse association underlying within Odyssey. Had you also made a request for Greenview to do the same?
No.
So you only asked one of the two associations?
Fairway was the only applicable because those were the models we were building originally. It wasn't the Greenview models.
Oh, because they
So
don't
it
even
would've
look
been-
like, they don't look, the models there, I'm sorry, just look very different than
No, they're-
anything
they're-
that I've seen for Fairway
Those-
or for Greenview.
Those plans are the Fairway.
So that's,
From a procedural standpoint, I know sometimes it's easier, if you could direct them to the chair and the
sorry,
commission.
I apologize.
They
No,
can come
that's
back and
okay.
answer.
I
any questions.
apologize in terms of that.
Yeah.
So that was, but we are trying to work through these situations. The draft that we received of the cost-sharing agreement had many issues with it, and we're still struggling with a lot of the issues that we're faced with. I'm hopeful that we can resolve these issues, but there are several issues in the cost-sharing agreement which are, shall we say, problematic in nature for the association. And I am, for the first time, hearing of an underlying association that would be created, that would be dormant. And I have no idea how that would affect the Umbrella Association, the Estate Homes Association, the Greenview Association, or the Fairway Association in terms of that. Because 15 minutes ago was the first time we have heard about a dormant underlying association. So I don't even know how that fits into all this process in terms of this. So I see a lot of issues that need to be resolved here. And I understand what people would be to make it easy for them, but it has to be fair and equitable to all. Any
Thank you.
questions?
Any questions? I don't have any. Any questions from the commission?
Thank you for your
Okay.
time.
Thank you, Mr. McLeod.
Good evening. I'm Lene Bryant. I'm also in the Umbrella Association. I just wanted to say that we as homeowners, we have a very large investment in this as well. So I do understand that the developer has millions of dollars that he's working with to develop it, but we have millions of dollars in the home values that we have. And that's why it's so important for us to go through this very carefully. We are working with the attorney. I'm an attorney as well. I'm trying to assist as best I can with the attorney to get through some of these things. Now, what I wanted to clarify with regard to what Andy just mentioned is that, number one, the cost-sharing agreement that we received only addressed the gate. And there are so many more items that the Umbrella Association handles. There's the ponds, there's irrigation, there's landscaping, all of that for which the new Phase 7 would benefit from as well. So we, as homeowners, pay $100 quarterly for those benefits and those services. And so we didn't see why the same $100 quarterly wouldn't be applicable to any other units that are being constructed there, whether they're being rented or not. So the costs that we are talking about is not just a gate. That's just minimal. Okay, so it's the other things that I mentioned. And then the other thing that was in this cost-sharing agreement said that we would handle garbage disposal, which Umbrella does not. The underlying associations handle that, their own disposal. We do not handle landscaping for any unit owners. That's the underlying associations such as the Greenview and the Fairway, and a number of other things. So we, as the Umbrella Association, are not going to be able, it's not within our purview to handle those things. And so we were wondering, how are those things going to be handled by these other units, this Phase 7? So that was not addressed. We need to have that addressed. So those are the things that we're working through. So we are diligently trying to get through this. It's just a very important matter, and I'm sure we will get through it, but we just have to make sure that all the i's are dotted and the t's are crossed. So just so know that we are working diligently. We're not trying to hold anyone up from developing anything, but we've just got to protect our investment as well and make sure we can operate with the increased volume that we're going to now have at our development. Thank you.
Thank you. You said your name really quick. Was it Linnea?
It's Lene Bryant.
Linnea Bryant. All right, thank you. Was there anybody else from the public wishing to speak? No? Okay. Any further comments or questions from commissioners here?
I just have one thing. It seems to me, and again, I came into this game late, so I'm in my third inning. Is it my understanding that when you live in the Odyssey development, that you pay to more than one homeowners association? That would just be my question.
I think that would be addressed to the president.
I can address that, too. So,
Every resident has two obligations for association dues.
One to the umbrella and then one to the
umbrella and
individual.
one to a different organization. And we're not a master-slave structure, which is normal for HOAs. We are three independent associations that appoints the umbrella board.
Okay, so the sub-associations don't pay the umbrella.
They are,
It's
actually
individual,
separate
okay.
entities in among on themselves.
Okay.
and the
that's good.
petitioner's proposal would be, so to kind of address Andy's concern, the dormant sub-association will be outside of the umbrella. It wouldn't be under that. That's why, so that would stand alone by itself, and then to address them not being part of the umbrella is why we're working on this cost-sharing agreement. So that way those costs that Lene said, that kind of the roads, the ponds, the landscaping, the stuff they're still gonna benefit from is still covered. So that's how that gets covered. But the underlying association would not really be under the umbrella, and it wouldn't be connected to the other three. But all the current residents have the sub-association and then the umbrella that they're attached to.
You still made it. You're under the wire here. If you could just sign in real quick. Did I swear you in? Were you part of
Yes,
it? Okay.
yes. My name is Alma Fulton, and I'm just a member of one of the associations. But my question was to the last issue. Why would these new homes be allowed to be built without being part of the umbrella, the master association? I hear you saying it's going to have its own association, but I feel like they also need to be part of the umbrella. Why should, is that what I'm hearing, first of all? Is that what I'm hearing? They don't want to be part of the umbrella, but they need to be.
Well, so there's nothing requiring them to join the umbrella association. So outside of the PUD that they proposed previously that had that part of it, there's nothing that says they have to join that. But I think everybody's in agreement, there is some obligations here for costs, so that's why the cost sharing.
So,
agreement
Dan,
would cover that.
maybe I'm not understanding, because I just asked earlier, if, without the substantial deviation, is there a requirement that there's an association?
That was their last proposal, so that would be, yes, the PUD holds them to say you'd have
So if
to
they
fall
built
under
what
this
was already
agreement, but
approved-
The issue is obviously they can't join it without joining it. They got denied from that essentially. So that's why we're in a position to basically have to approve some other option. So they basically got denied from a sub-association. They can't join the umbrella, and this is their alternative proposal. They certainly could agree later to join the umbrella. I think it's easier that way, but this is
I'm sorry, I don't know about
this
the
is
rest of the commission.
alternative.
I'm not following. Is it that the developer doesn't want to join the umbrella, or the umbrella doesn't want this new development to be part of it? Is there someone who can speak to that?
We wanted them to be part of it, so they could just pay the same $100 per quarter that we pay. To help share with the costs. I mean, that's the easiest solution to this.
They should be part of the umbrella,
Right.
Okay,
That makes sense.
so,
And then if they form their own HOA, I think I heard you say Golfview. Golfview? Did you say Golfview HOA would be formed? Then that would solve the issue. So
okay.
Yeah, the previous proposal would have been they joined one of the existing ones, and then,
that would be too much work because our homes are older.
So that's
We
what
got a
got-
lot of other issues going on with our homes, so why not form a new HOA for those homes?
Sure.
It only makes sense. And they're rentals. And when they sell, I mean, I like
so
the
there's
idea that they
nothing
would be
related to-
already
So there's
formed.
nothing related to rentals and ownership that can be addressed
Mm-hmm.
as part of this.
Well, but I could recognize that just given the difference in age and profile of the existing homeowner, existing association versus new construction, there's, I could see that there would be a concern about just having something that's, completely different.
So they wouldn't have a sub-association here, though. It would be dormant unless one sells. So that really wouldn't fit under the umbrella situation. So that's why the cost sharing is an agreement. And I think what they're waiting on is that kind of list of costs and everything. So I think they've said, we're open to, what are these other costs? We're open to that, is what I've heard from the petitioner. So if that's, I would think it's reasonable that if the $100 is covering all these common area costs, it would just, whatever that cost sharing agreement is, would tie them to pay the same cost per unit as kind of any of the other ones. So it isn't joining the association, but it's kind of an end around way because they're not going to have a sub-association active there. Because they're just going to have one owner.
What about the other covenants that the umbrella covers when they need to be up under that, I would think.
Well, right now, we're just concerned with the umbrella association costs, because however they handle their trash collection, their landscaping and so forth, that would be on that phase.
Yeah, and I think that's where we're at, is they're
We currently
waiting.
do our own landscaping and our own trash,
So we're
and
just
it'll be
concerned
self-
about the
right.
umbrella costs.
And again, we have not gotten any additional information. I'm not trying to put it on your attorney. Obviously, you guys you're working through it, and I appreciate that. We just need communication, we need information, and then we can work it out.
Yeah.
We
I
just,
think
Let's
that-
work it out.
Okay,
I think
let's
that's
get
where
back
we're
on
at.
track here,
given
guys.
us any indication that there's any issue, but we haven't gotten any additional information.
Yeah, I think both the attorneys have agreed on the route we're going here. We're
Yeah.
just waiting on, kind of what you're talking about, hasn't formally gotten back to them.
We want to get it done, we do. We just need the information.
All right, we're still in the middle of a public hearing.
Okay.
You would like to speak?
It's basically about,
Sure.
I want to know how many units is this building? How many units? How many units?
Was it
There's no
50?
pictures.
It's 117.
91.
Okay.
Yeah,
Which is the
117 total, just like before. Same
117.
number as before.
Will they be all rentals?
They're currently intended to be, yes.
Yeah.
117, and that will be all rentals?
At this time, yes. 'cause it's gonna be-
Just so that we're clear on the question of private ownership versus rental, we're not permitted to consider that as part of the approval process.
Yeah, there's no legal authority to regulate rental versus ownership approvals, or if you rent your home. So none of that can be entered into the
We're
agreement.
we're prohibited from even considering it. So just so you're clear on that. So I would like to solicit from the rest of the commissioners here, because it sounds to me like we have a challenge here in threading the needle. As Commissioner Merrick highlighted earlier, I think there's still a lot of things to work out. And I don't want to speak for the petitioner here, but it sounds like if we were recommending that condition to the village board, you would not be in favor of that. Is that a fair?
No, like I said, we said we will work diligently to get to this resolved, but we just can't have that as a precondition of our
Right.
approval or a permit or an occupancy, and I think we've explained why that's the problem. Not
I,
that we're trying to avoid doing the agreement, it's not the issue.
Yep.
We will get it done.
And I'll say it's not a precondition of the approval, it's not a precondition of permit, it is a precondition of occupancy, but we are open to, if there was an issue, we are open to
It still creates
reevaluating.
similar problems.
Sure,
That's the
and,
problem.
yeah, for us, the concern is that there's nothing holding it to get done. So we're open, if there's other wording, or you have other options, just understand that's what our concern is, right? There's nothing holding this to getting done.
well, so,
We're open to other options, though.
okay, so before we close the public hearing, it doesn't appear to me that there is a viable recommendation for the plan commission to make, because as proposed, it's not acceptable to the petitioner.
Well, everything
And,
else in your recommendation, other than that one item. the one-
right,
But
but,
that's in there.
but my understanding, Dan, I don't want to speak for staff either, but if we strip that condition, then it leaves open too many other problems.
That's staff's recommendation on this, is that that condition stay in there. If that does, we're in support of it. We think everything will get addressed and worked out. Without it, I would ask it be continued, because I don't know what other options there are there.
Okay.
Whether you guys can vote
Okay.
without it.
All right, then I say go ahead and approve it that way, and if we have to, talk, the board is ultimately who makes the decision, so maybe we can get something resolved before the 18th of April,
And then it's a moot point.
and then it'll be put to bed,
Okay.
so.
Or if there,
Okay.
again, if you have some other alternative wording that our attorneys can say, yes,
Yeah,
this is
that's fine.
still,
We can work on it. We can work
yeah.
on it.
Okay.
We can bring that to board as well.
So I appreciate that, and that's the needle I was looking to thread here, because the last thing I want to do is, continue the public hearing or drag this thing out. I'd like to see if we could move the process forward, and there's a window, a pretty short window, to get this worked out. But if the parties seem agreeable to it, then I think we could probably move forward with that. And even though it's clear that condition is not acceptable to you, ultimately, it's the board's decision, and if you guys can work it out in the meantime. Does that seem fair?
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions or comments or concerns from the commission? Yes, Commissioner Hamilton.
So I understand the idea right now is to push this up to the trustees and let them vote. And at that point, if the trustees approve what's not acceptable to the developers then can say, no, we don't agree, even though the board is.
Yeah, I believe the objective here is that between this and the village board, the hope is that the parties can work it out, and it's
Or at least
kind,
get close to working it out.
yeah, it's kind of a moot point.
But it
Right.
moves things
Close to
forward.
finalizing something.
I
Exactly.
think get the response of what the association's looking for. I think, I can't speak for you. I think you'd feel a little more comfortable if you
Yeah,
got a
yeah, I
response
agree.
saying,
I think so.
here are our concerns, because we're hearing them here. I haven't even heard it before. So I think that's what they're waiting for, is if they can get that response, I think maybe that resolves some of the feelings like this isn't moving forward, so.
Okay.
But your recommendation would be, it's sounding like it would be with that condition, so you guys would be voting on it with that, then the board could consider changes to that if they wanted, or whatever.
Yeah, I will tell you for my part, my only concern on that recommendation, on that condition for occupancy is essentially what the petitioner put out there, is that, number one, that may hurt their ability to actually get started, and number two, if a deal can't be worked out, even that far out, then that could be a problem for them. But if all the parties are willing to move forward to the board with this and hopefully work it out before that board, the board can always continue it themselves.
And that happened the last time, right, when we were hoping this would move quicker that time, and as we dug into it, we realized it wasn't. So if the board if it's closer and not done yet, the board could theoretically continue it too.
Yeah.
Or-
And
Or again, adjust the conditions or something like that. If we have alternative wording that our attorney can review ahead of time, maybe there's something. Again, our goal is just, we need something to hold it to,
Yep.
right? So if there's something else they can propose that does that, but maybe allows staff some flexibility in there to give temp COs, or we'll leave it up to them to propose if they have some other solution that helps maybe them out on that side a little better.
Okay, good, good. Yeah, my primary concern here was stopping this in its tracks, and I don't think we're going to be doing that. Yeah, you can go ahead. We'll be moving to close the public hearing in a moment, but.
Point of information. Were there any discussion with the developer and the associations prior to the building of these new rentals? If so, what were the discussion like? What was it? Was it opaque?
There was correspondence back in 2020 about what was going on. I wasn't part of that conversation, to be honest with you, but there was communication. That's when the whole adding it to the fairway and/or the umbrella, that discussion was going on, whether or not we had gotten added or not.
But no agreement was made.
No formal agreement was made.
Okay.
And since the products changed, the Fairway Association would not have been the right fit. We would have had to create our own anyways, because the units are different from what, I mean, the 26 we built are substantially the Fairway units, in essence. The original models we built back in '08 and all that. But the new ranch townhomes obviously wouldn't have fit into that Fairway Association properly. So that's why we do have another association called Golfview Townhome Association. That's, like we said, is gonna be attached to the amendment. And if we decide to sell one unit, that has to be recorded, formed, and then there'll be another association governing all
But it's
that.
important that they don't have all the benefits and not the burden.
Okay, I
You know
understand.
what I'm saying? That's all.
Okay. It sounds like there's a path forward,
Yep,
I think.
I think so.
Okay, so with that, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Move Commissioner Gatto, second.
Second.
Second Commissioner Gaskell. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Public hearing is now closed. We have the standards for special use, and in the interest of time here, I don't know that we need to track through every single one of them here.
Same as yours last time.
Yeah,
They're the same as the last time. They're also published as part of the packet. and
Absolutely.
On the board here.
okay. So with that, we would have a proposed motion here, and I would entertain a motion from
And
the
I-
commission.
I will also say you can reference the you can reference the conditions in the staff report and on the screen instead of reading each one if you would like
I think
to,
that would be perfectly fair.
because that will
Yes.
make it easier.
Does that make sense to whomever is going to read? Who's going to make a motion?
Can I make a motion to table this until they actually get the situation resolved? So we don't go and waste the trustees' time, more of our time and their time.
Okay, so I have a motion from Commissioner Gaskell to table this item. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second, Commissioner Merrick. Could I get a voice vote, please?
Commissioner Gaskell.
Yes.
Commissioner Gatto.
And
No.
this is just a motion to table, so everyone's clear.
Yes. Are we clear on what's the motion that's on the table? Okay.
Commissioner Gatto?
No.
Commissioner Hamilton?
No.
Commissioner Manny?
No.
Commissioner Merrick?
Yes.
Commissioner Sepisi?
No.
Acting Chair Shaw?
No. Okay, motion fails. Okay. Do we have another motion on the matter?
I'd like to make a motion to recommend that the village board grant a special use permit for substantial deviation from the Odyssey Club planned unit development to the petitioner Anthony DeAngelis on behalf of Intercontinental Real Estate and Development to permit a second model type to be constructed for single-story ranch townhomes at Olympus Drive and Apollo Court Odyssey Club Phase 7 in the R5 PD Low Density Residential Odyssey Club PUD zoning district in the accordance with the plan submitted and adopted findings of fact as proposed in the April 6, 2023 staff report, subject to the below 4 conditions.
As referenced in the staff report.
As
Yeah.
referenced in the motion.
All right. All right, so we have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second, motion Commissioner Gatto, second Commissioner Hamilton. Voice vote, please.
Commissioner Gaskell.
No.
Commissioner Gatto.
Yes.
Commissioner Hamilton.
Yes?
Commissioner Manny.
Yes.
Commissioner Merrick.
No.
Commissioner Sepisi.
Yes.
Acting Chair Shaw.
Yes. Okay, the motion carries.
And can I just clarify really quick? Just, this helps us go to board and say why there's no votes. I assume, based on the previous motion, you guys just preferred this get worked out before the board
Correct.
considers it, correct?
Correct.
So it's not an outright no to the proposal, just you
Correct.
preferred it to get,
Correct.
okay.
Yeah,
Thank
I
you.
voted in favor of this the first time. I have no issues with the actual build-out itself.
Okay, thank you. That helps us relay that to the village board, that it's not an outright opposition, but just that you wanted this issue resolved.
Yeah, I
Before
appreciate
that.
that. And thank you for calling that out there, Dan. I don't want to speak for the other commissioners, but it sounds to me like we have consensus that we want this worked out. We have a difference in timing, right? In procedurally. Okay. All right, so this will go to the village board. Do we have a date?
One more motion on this, so this one.
Oh, I'm sorry, there was a second motion. All right. There you go. Do I have a motion on this matter here?
I'll make the motion. I make a motion to grant the petitioner, Anthony DeAngelis, on behalf of Intercontinental Real Estate and Development, site plan architectural approval for single-story ranch townhomes at Olympus Drive and Apollo Court, the Odyssey Club Phase 7 in the R5 PD, low-density residential Odyssey Club PUD zoning district, in accordance with the plans submitted and listed in the April 6, 2023 staff report, with the 3 conditions included there.
Motion Commissioner Hamilton, second.
Second.
Second Commissioner Gatto. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Gaskell.
No.
Commissioner Gatto.
Yes.
Commissioner Hamilton.
Yes?
Commissioner Manny.
Yes.
Commissioner Merrick.
Yes.
Commissioner Sepisi.
Yes.
Acting Chair Shaw.
Yes. Okay, that motion carries. I don't have, in front of me here, there's not a third one, right?
Nope.
All right.
So it's
The-
April 18th.
We're having computer issues here.
April 18th would be since there's a no vote, it'd be the first reading.
Okay, so procedurally, first reading would be April 18th. Approval would take place at a subsequent board meeting, assuming they did first reading there. And hopefully, the parties can get together.
And I
work
think
out
if
some of these
something's
details.
but resolved or changed in that time too, the board still has the ability to waive first reading on their own. Procedurally, we do first reading adoption. If there's any no votes, that's an adopted procedure. In terms of how staff handles this, the board's always got an option to still waive it. So if something else changes in the meantime, they could consider that as well, to combine them and kind of expedite it. So.
All right, good deal. All right, so I appreciate the input of the developer and all the residents. That concludes this item for the evening here. We're going to move on with the rest of the meeting. The next item actually is receive comments from the public. That's outside of this issue, but there's a lot of public here, so if anybody else would like to speak, you're welcome to. Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to good of the order.
I forgot to say.
Thank you.
It's okay, thank you.
And Anthony, I can follow up with the times and the meeting and the dates for the village board and stuff, just to make sure you have the right dates.
Yeah, no, I think I have the right dates, but
Okay.
that's
And-
fine. You wanna set-
Yeah, we could
Thank
talk
you,
about
Mr.
Monday.
McLeod, Ms. Bryant, for speaking this evening. Appreciate that.
Okay, so for good of the order, I'm just going to run through status on a few of our projects. So the D.R. Horton Oak Ridge subdivision, if you recall, had been approved for townhomes and single-family dwellings. And so we're working on the first townhome. So this development is over by Ridgeland and Oak Forest. So it's in the permitting process. So following that, single-family home permit applications are anticipated to come in the next few months. So there's progress on that. The Brady Gill Funeral Home had an addition that received approvals, so they're working with us in the permitting process right now. And Magnuson, the first permit has been issued, so there's work on the site. They will start going vertical. The order of the buildings will start with the clubhouse, and then the residence buildings will proceed from north to south.
So that's a big one, because it's been sitting out there for a long time, so I believe the trailers out there, they are working. Their goal is 18 months, everything. I think that's a little aggressive, but hey, power to them if they could do it. Everything's ordered out there, so like all the panels, the pre-manufactured panels, everything's financed and moving, so I think it'll start flying out there, but that's good. It's obviously been sitting out there for a while. Outside of Amazon, that's the number 2 question I get, so it's good to see that moving forward. Love it, like it, hate it, it's still just, it's not sitting out there as a foundation anymore, so it'll be good to see it finish.
I have no comment.
So Bing and Gavel, that will hopefully be opening this summer. So if not June, possibly early July, with the outdoor patio to open slightly ahead of that grand opening. Ascend Cannabis, so we issued a temporary certificate of occupancy. So there's some conditions, if you go out and see the building, the canopy's not out there yet, but it's just a matter of getting the supplies in, and looks good. They are anticipating a soft opening on the 17th and full opening on the 20th. And lastly, Loyola is moving along with some additional preparations that they need for their space. So it'll start to become occupied with employees, but as far as when patients can come in, they're looking at August 1st. My colleague Michael has another thing to mention.
Yeah, so for some of you who were not here at the previous Plan Commission meeting, we had a discussion of fence regulations. So I just want to recap that discussion briefly. The commission agreed that we would allow open-style and closed-style fences 10 feet in from property lines in secondary front yards. We would allow a 6-foot height maximum, and chain link fences would be prohibited. So that's going to come before you with a draft ordinance for the first hearing in May for more consideration.
And it may not be perfect, right? Our goal is kind of, can we move the needle towards, I think what we're hearing is be a little looser, trying to avoid some of these variances. So I think that'll be a proposal. You guys will certainly get it ahead of time and can still put any input into that as well. So,
And you said that'll be at the next meeting?
May
Oh, it'll be in May?
May
Okay.
4th, just because we still have to publish. On that note, April 20th, unless I get something like early next week, it's likely canceled, so, due to lack of agenda items. But there's a lot coming, so just take that as your 1 week off, your one off, because for the rest of spring and summer, we'll probably be pretty busy. So, which is a good thing. There's a lot of stuff happening.
All right. Does that wrap it up there?
Yep, that's all we have.
All right, good
Make a
deal.
motion, we adjourn.
Getting ahead of me there. But I do have a motion. Commissioner Gaskell, second. Second, Commissioner Gatto. All in favor of adjourning, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, we are adjourned.